Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. It is Thursday, March 30th at 10 a.m. and we are here for a proceeding hearing in docket 2023-2-E. Before we begin, let's take a roll call of commissioners. With us virtually, we have Commissioner Irvin and Commissioner Justin Williams. Present in the hearing room, we have Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Carol Lee Williams, Commissioner Caston, and Chair Belser. I'm going to recognize our staff counsel, Ms. Mosier, to read the docket.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, commissioners and parties. We are here today for the proceeding in docket number 2023-2-E, the annual review of base rates for fuel costs of Dominion Energy South Carolina, Inc., for a potential increase or decrease in fuel adjustment. The proceeding has been scheduled for today, March 30th, 2023 at 10 a.m. All parties participating in this matter are available and the docket is in order. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mosier. Let's take appearances from the parties. Who's representing Dominion Energy South Carolina?
Good morning, Chair Belser and members of the commission. My name is Chad Burgess and I'm in-house corporate counsel for Dominion Energy South Carolina. And with me today is Matthew Gissendaner. He is also in-house corporate counsel, and Michael Anselmo from the law firm of McGuire Woods, who serves as our outside counsel, is present as well. Together we represent the company. It's a pleasure to appear before you today, and we appreciate this opportunity to present the company's case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. South Carolina Energy Users Committee.
Madam Chair, I'm Scott Elliott. I represent the energy users in this docket. Thank you.
Thank you. South Carolina Coastal Conservation League and Southern Alliance for Clean Energy.
Good morning, Chair Belser. I'm Kate Mixon on behalf of SACE and CCL in this proceeding, and with me today is my co-counsel, Emma Clancy.
Thank you. Office of Regulatory Staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Powers, members of the Commission, good morning. Nicole Given appearing on behalf of the Office of Regulatory Staff. Present with me in the hearing room today is Alex Knowles.
Thank you. We have a few public witnesses to hear from this morning. Before we hear from those witnesses, are there any preliminary matters related to our public witnesses?
Chair Belser, members of the commission, I do have one preliminary matter I wanted to just make the customers aware of. Number one, on behalf of Dominion Energy, we do appreciate the feedback that our customers give us, and we appreciate the time that they're taking out of their schedule to provide you with comments about this proceeding. I did want our customers to know that Dominion Energy is fully aware of the external pressures that are out there in the marketplace, in the world, and we realize that prices are going up on a lot of different goods, including energy, which is the reason why we're here today. But that's not lost on us, and we have customer service representatives who it's their sole job to ensure that if financial assistance is needed for customers, that they in fact are getting it. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give a telephone number that any customer can call who needs financial assistance. We have customer service representatives who are manning that line right now. They're available from Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 during a normal work business hours. And they're also going to be available 1 hour after this evening's night hearing, which begins at 6 o'clock. So the number is 1-800-922-8802, and I'll repeat that number. It's 1-800-922-8802, and we would encourage our customers who need financial assistance with their bills to give us a call, and we'd also encourage customers who have interest in energy efficiency. We have programs on that. We would ask them to give us a call to talk about those things too, if they're so inclined to do so. Thank you, Chair Belser.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Office of Regulatory Staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few brief comments for consumers. ORS is a state agency which is separate and apart from the Public Service Commission. ORS is charged with representing the public interest and making recommendations to the Commission. This portion of the hearing this morning is for customers to make their voices heard, which is important for you all as you consider this matter and render a decision. If customers have a specific billing or service issue, consumer services representatives from ORS are standing by, and that reference number is 1-800-922 1531. Once again, that's 1-800-922-1531. And Madam Chair, I would ask just in closing that the pre-registration sheet from this morning's hearing be made part of the record in this case.
Thank you, Ms. Given. We will mark the pre-registration sheet for customer witnesses as hearing exhibit number 1. Is there any objection? Hearing none, we'll receive that registration sheet into evidence as hearing exhibit number 1.
Chair Belzer, I do have one legal issue I wanted to bring to your attention, and that is these are public witnesses. Their testimony will be put into the record. We don't know what they intend to say in this proceeding. To the extent that there is a need for us to respond, we would like a sufficient opportunity to do that. I don't want to interrupt customers while they're talking to engage in any legal objections, but I did want that to be put on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. We will figure out a process for that. Okay. We have our first public witness on the line, and is that Ms. Kremel? Okay. Ms. Kremel, can you hear me? You can hear us? Ms. Kremel, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. We can hear you. I am going to ask the court reporter to give you the oath, and then I have some preliminary questions to get you started, okay?
Okay.
Would you state your full name for me?
Nancy Kremel.
Okay. The court reporter is going to give you the oath now. Just a second.
Ma'am, raise your right hand, please.
I think your microphone turned off. There you go.
Ma'am, raise your right hand, please.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Ms. Kremel, could you give us just your street name, not your house number, your street name and your town?
Southwood Drive in Columbia, South Carolina.
Thank you, ma'am. And are you a Dominion Energy customer?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Kremel, you have 3 minutes to, we give all our public witnesses 3 minutes. So you have 3 minutes to tell us what you want to say about this case. And you may start now. Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm speaking for a lot of people when I say this. I paid very high bills for many years when this company was South Carolina Electric and Gas. I paid well over $300 a month. And I live in a 2,000 square foot house, so that's not a really reasonable price. I got no refund from that. I'm now on a fixed income like a lot of other people in this area. And if the rates are raised much higher, it's going to be very difficult for me to pay higher rates, and I cannot imagine what's going to happen to people with lower incomes than mine. I don't think they'll be able to do it. And my final point is that I spend time in some other states with friends and relatives, and I noticed that South Carolina's rates are already higher than rates in California, Illinois, and Connecticut. So if we raise the rates, we're really going to be out of the norm for that. And that's really all I have to say.
Ms. Kremel, thank you for that testimony. Let me see if any of the parties have questions for you. Are there any questions for this witness? Commissioners, are there any questions for this witness? Ms. Kremel, thank you very much for taking your time to let us know the impact that you have and for giving us your thoughts today. We certainly appreciate it. And
Thank you for letting me speak. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Our next witness, Ms. Fralix is on the line.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Fralix, can you hear me?
Yes, it's faint.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that, please, ma'am?
Yes. It's
Okay.
not
Okay.
very loud.
Okay. We'll try to talk into the microphone better. Ms. Fralix, please state your name for me.
I could not hear you. There was some background noise.
Please state your name.
Oh, yes. Cassandra Fralix.
Ms. Fralix, the court reporter is going to swear you in as a witness. Just a second.
Ma'am, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I confirm, yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Fralix, I have a couple of questions for you before you begin. Would you state your street, not your house number, but the street you live on and your hometown?
Corley Mill Road in Lexington, South Carolina.
And are you a Dominion Energy customer?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Okay. Ms. Fralix, you have 3 minutes to present your testimony and give us your thoughts on this docket. So you may start now.
Yes, ma'am. Let me say that I appreciate Dominion's offer to assist people who are having difficulties paying for their bills. However, they still expect payment. And unfortunately, most utility companies are inaccessible to the communities they're serve. That's because that most people are really unfamiliar with the whole process. So I think we need to do a better job, at least put it on the bill, that we will relieve you of some financial obligations if you have a certain rate of income. So I know as a volunteer with Mutual Aid Midlands that there are many people out there that fit into the category of having difficulty paying their bills. That doesn't mean that they're not going to pay. It means that when you raise the rate, it adds an additional burden on these people. And we know that Dominion has been asking and asking and asking for rate increases. I looked at the earnings for Dominion, and I did see that Dominion made a profit in 2022. They didn't make as much profit as they did the previous year, but they still were making a profit. So I think as a public service commission that we should consider whether we are in the business of helping stockholders get more money, and that seems to be the business of this utility company. So if we are concerned about the public, then we should not be concerned about the profits, and we should be doing everything we can to make sure that the people are taken care of. I think that we have some bad management and decision making that has occurred, and this is planning in the short run, not in the long run. And if we have management that's making poor decisions, then their salaries should be cut commensurate with the rate of increase that they have for their rates. We don't need to be paying them for doing a job that is not in the best interest of the public, are making money off of misfortunes of other people. Dominion needs to find ways to save customers money. Now, I know they said you can call in and we'll do something about giving you information about how to increase your energy efficiency on your homes. However, Dominion has to take the lead in contacting people, finding out what kind of rebates that they can have. A lot of people, get lost, especially people who are struggling. They have so many other things pressing on them that they get lost in the whole idea of what can be done and how they can go about doing it. So it's my understanding that Dominion has set their bar low on new programs. They haven't really proposed any new programs, and they are not considering the billions of dollars that the federal government has been offering as incentives to increase energy efficiency. I feel very strongly that Dominion should not be allowed to continue to raise rates as long as they're making a profit, that we are not seeing that the shareholder is, we are seeing that the shareholder is the one that's primary concern to them. And that drop in income that they had did not come because of a customer getting a break. So these are my concerns. I also am retired, and I find it very difficult to continue to see a squeeze on my standard of living. I think that we need to consider very carefully how we can help the most vulnerable. And primarily, we need to do everything we can to let them know that we have programs and this is how you get to the program. I do not believe that that is being done in the best way possible. Thank you so much for allowing me to express my opinion to you. I feel fortunate that I'm one of the people who has a little bit of knowledge about what's going on and tries to let you know that there are lots of people out there who need our support, and they need us to stand up for them. Thank you very much.
Ms. Fralix, thank you very much for your comments. Please hold the line and let me see if there are any questions for you from either the parties or the commissioners. Parties, any questions for Ms. Fralix? Hearing none. Commissioners, Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. And thank you, Ms. Fralix, for being prepared and for all that you shared, because you really covered a wide gamut. I'm curious, and first of all, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Again, it is faint, but I am listening attentively.
I'll get closer to the microphone. Is that better?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. I'm curious how you found out about this particular fuel case that Dominion has before us.
Yes, ma'am. It came in on my feed, my Google feed, and I think it came from the Conservation Commission League.
So do you recall receiving anything from the company?
No, I do not.
Okay.
If you give me a second, I can look at my email very quickly to see if I had anything on here. I do not see anything in my email from Dominion regarding this increase. No, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you for checking. And are you aware that this is only related to fuel cost?
Only related to the fuel as opposed to energy efficiency? Is that what you're saying?
Clearly they're related, but that the statute under which we're operating is related to the state allowing the company to apply for a recuperation of their fuel cost.
Yes, ma'am. I am very much aware of that. I do think that Dominion has an obligation, however, to make sure that the fuel costs are lower for people by increasing the energy efficiency in their home.
Thank you. Have you ever followed up with Dominion to experience what that energy efficiency program is like personally?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, the home that I live in, I paid a lot of money to have, at the time it wasn't Dominion, it was SCENG, and they had a program where they would come out and see where your leaks were in your home and make suggestions. So I was familiar with that. But I paid a lot of money to have my house, my attic, the insulation increased in it, and to have someone do one of the tests on the house where they send air through and find where the leaks are. So my house is quite energy efficient compared to most people, and my home is. I moved here this is a home that I had built, and this was in 1994. So I know that by having your house insulated, you can cut down on cost of your utility bill.
Thank you. That's really clear, and it helps me to understand that you have the depth of that background. My last question is, how do you think, if you could advise the company, because you kind of can right now, how do you think that they should have let you know about this particular proceeding?
I think in their bill that they send out, that it would have been a good idea to do that. And it should be very clear that the problems that they're having, and they should state what their profit is and why they think this is an important, or not important, but a necessary increase. As I mentioned, they still made a profit. And it's my understanding if you're making a profit, that means that your company is doing well, even if the profit was not as high as the prior year. None of us are. All of us are experiencing some more cost related to other things, and it affects our finances. So I think that would be a good idea to let people know in their bill, primarily that some method that people get access to this information very readily.
Thank you, Ms. Fralix. Now, this really will be the last question. Do you get your bill electronically or by paper, by mail?
I pay $2 extra a month to get my bill paper.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what they charge. They're charging more money now for you to get a paper copy. There are so many poor people that do not have access to computers. And I don't, know if they've decided not to utilize the $2 charge, and so they don't even get a chance to look at their bill. But I decided to pay the money so that I could actually take the time and look at it. But I thought, that's sort of an excessive charge, but I know a lot of companies are doing that now.
Ms. Fralix, thank you very much. I appreciate your insights.
Thank you for listening to me and considering my views.
Ms. Fralix, Commissioner Caston has a question.
Good morning, Ms. Fralix.
Good morning.
Relative to your bill, have you had a chance to look at it, or do you recall either a stuffer or something in your bill that would be attached that referenced this particular hearing?
No, sir, I do not. I have a shredding machine, and I usually shred my bills. But I am looking now to see if I had anything. It looks like I have shredded my last bill, but I think I would have recalled that.
Well, I don't expect.
Yes, sir.
I don't expect you to go through your shredded stuff, and I bet that felt good shredding that bill. Well, if you find it might be worth looking at. I can't attest whether you did or did not. I do actually receive a Dominion bill, and at least on mine, I do recall, I think, a stuffer relative to that. But, you know, if you get a chance, see if you can find that. And if you can't, you be sure to call them and make sure you get those things in the future.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. You know, sometimes it's easy to overlook things because you want to just pay the bill. So unless it says very clearly, we're going to raise your rates, it's most, you know, it's not something that always is clear to people, or at least to me, that this is going to happen because it's so many papers that come in, you know, in the packet.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with you 100%. I struggle with the same thing, and I think maybe bigger print and bigger paper would be helpful. But I appreciate your testimony. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, sir. And I will check on the bill and see if I can locate anything that was included in that, and I will certainly send you a message regarding that.
Ms. Freilich, just a moment. Commissioners, any further questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Irvin?
thank you. Ms. Freilich, thank you for testifying today, and thank you also for your volunteer community work. Tell us a little bit more about the group that you're working with in the community.
As I mentioned, Mutual Aid Midlands is a volunteer group that seeks to assist people in any difficulty that they might have relating to just getting on in the community. They do not necessarily fund everything because we're not able to do that, but we will try to let people know what is available that might be helpful to them. So we have, you know, contact information about the programs that are being offered in the city to assist people. So we get together and try to help one another out to meet survival needs, especially if the system is failing in some regard and not meeting those needs.
Do you have a professional staff?
No, sir. This is a volunteer run, so we don't have any professional staff.
Have you applied for nonprofit status?
You know, we thought about doing that, and right now we have a connection with Agape, and they have been very helpful to us in assisting us with any funds that come in. So we have them as part of our team.
Is Agape a nonprofit entity in South Carolina?
Yes, yes, sir. It is.
Well, you might want to see if their professional staff could reach out to Dominion and ask them for a meeting, a community meeting on energy efficiency and any other concerns that you might have. I feel like the company would probably be willing to do that if someone contacted them. Do you think that might be helpful?
Well, to speak on behalf of Dominion, we did ask for some assistance for a family back in December, and Dominion was very helpful and sent support to one of the families that was in need.
Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that.
Yes.
You know, I think they do try to do outreach, and I like your idea of trying to get the word out to those that perhaps don't have a computer or internet service. But we appreciate your testimony today, and thank you for taking the time to share these concerns. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And thank you for your questions. I think we're all interested in the welfare of one another, and we just, need to do whatever we can to offer services and to assist. And I certainly would hope that Dominion continues to assist in the community. However, one or two people at a time is a nice gesture. But we've got to do a little bit more, I think, to make people aware, especially people who don't have access to the things that people who, have money and the ability to find out the information.
Thank you, Ms. Fralix. Just a moment. I believe Commissioner Justin Williams has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. This is an absolutely exquisite day. I'm sorry y'all are inside having to do this, but it is a lovely, lovely day.
Yes,
sir, thank you.
I agree with you. It is an exquisite day. I just have a few questions for you. Could you tell us a little bit more about what exactly you had done to your house? What work was done to your house by way of weatherization based on the recommendations made to you from the company?
Yes, sir. Well, I do not, this has been a while back, so I do not remember all of the details that they covered. But I think weatherization, of course, was the primary topic. I have updated appliances. That was one of the things that the energy efficient appliances was one of the main things that they said. I can afford to purchase energy efficient appliances. So that was not something that was an issue for me. What was more of an issue was the windows and the heat loss because of the inadequate insulation. You have to have money they made the suggestion, but I had to have enough money to pay for a company to come in and, they blew in my insulation in my attic. And I had to have enough money to have someone do the sealing, that was necessary, the caulking and things. So what SENG did was they just made the suggestion, and then, I paid for the other things. So there would need to be, in my opinion, there would need to be the company looking at the bills, that people have very high bills, are struggling, and then to make a direct contact with these people, go into the home, and excuse me if this is not part of your concern, but to go into the home and do this evaluation and then say, these are the services that we provide that we can offer you. And I know that the federal government years ago did have a program, and a lot of what was done was they would just replace appliances that were not energy efficient. But that still means that weatherization did not occur in the home. So there, it's a big issue, I think, to, help someone understand what could be done to improve the energy efficiency in the home.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with you 100%. Did you see an improvement in your monthly bill after the updates?
Oh, yes, definitely. So I put in more insulation than what most people would do. So my bill did drop dramatically. In fact, you know, I have often thought if I had to, I could survive, excuse me, because I have, you know, a little bit of understanding too about the importance of keeping shade trees around. And I also am of an older generation when we did not have air conditioners. And now, of course, with climate change, we've had days, many more days that are of extreme temperature. But I can remember as a child that we would be able to survive with just a fan, but of course we sat in front of the fan. But I have trees that, you know, help keep my home cool. And that might be another thing that would be assistance to people, just letting them know how valuable a tree can be in their yard to help cool the temperatures. In fact, my home in Lexington, when I come from Columbia to Lexington, the temperature will decrease by 10 degrees, just coming in out of the extreme asphalted concrete city into Lexington. And like I said, I have lots of tree cover. So that's another aspect. So that's a long answer to your question about, yes, sir, I did have a decrease in my utility bill.
Ma'am, I'm very happy to hear that. You already acknowledged that South Carolina has issues with its housing stock based on your experience in your local community service organization, and to hear that the upgrades that were recommended, even though it was by a former company, that it actually helped you. That's very happy to hear that that's an effective program. I've got a couple more questions for you. How would your opinion about this rate increase that the company is asking for change, or maybe even stay the same, if the rate increase was only due to the increase in fuel? The company wasn't making any money off the rate increase. They were just passing along the increased cost of fuel to the customer. Would your opinion change about it?
Well, as I mentioned, I think we had some poor decisions made by the leaders in the company for them not to consider a long-term issue. And the reason why that they're having to increase this cost or asking for more money is because they did not invest in other alternative energies. So their fuel cost, I would assume it's natural gas, should have been offset by energy efficiency, maybe wind or solar investments, so that people would not have to be continually burdened by these increasing costs.
Understood. Ma'am, thank you for the elevated discussion today. I thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, and I appreciate your service to the community. I hope your community understands and realizes how much of a jewel you are to be in that community and help them, and I'm very happy that you're doing so. Thank you for calling in today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your interest, and I have always, when I have spoken recently anyway, I felt like the Public Service Commission now is trying to do everything they can to help the public, which is what they are asked to do. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We appreciate it, and I can tell you from the chair all the way down to me, we definitely are trying to do everything we can, the best we can, and we appreciate you acknowledging that. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, further questions? Ms. Fralix, thank you very much for your testimony this morning. We appreciate your testimony and you taking time out of your schedule to address the issues that you have in this case. And with that, you are excused as a witness, and thank you again.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next witness, is this Mr. Black? Would you give us your name, please, sir? There you go, you're on. You're going to have to talk into it. It's get it kind of close. There you go.
All right. Yes, Paul Black.
Thank you, Mr. Black. The court reporter will swear you in, and then I have a couple of questions for you. Here's the court reporter right down front, the blonde lady.
Sir, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Black, if you would, could you give us your street name, not your house number or apartment number, and the town that you live in?
All right. So I moved like last week, but both are Dominion territories. In Dominion, the first was 281 Pine Sap Drive, and the currently is 77 Coltswood Lane.
And that's what town?
First one was in Blythewood. This current one is in Elgin.
Okay, and you are a Dominion customer?
Yes, ma'am.
At both of those addresses, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, sir. We appreciate you being here today. You may begin your testimony about this case, this requested rate increase, and we try to give every witness 3 minutes, if you would. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commission. I want to thank the Public Service Commission for the time to be able to provide this testimony today, first and foremost. And the reason I mentioned my 2 addresses over the last month is because I'd like to tell you guys a little bit about one of my neighbors at my old address on good old Pine Sap Drive in Blythewood, Miss Ruth Johnson, former educator, worked for 30 years in the school system and higher education as well, and she has a $400 a month power bill. She had a $500 bill this last January during that cold snap, and bills like that are just unbearable for folks around here. Folks, period. Honestly, I was, even knowing what I know, I was blown away when she told me, yeah, it was around $400 or $500. I was like, but you're a little old lady who lives by herself, works part-time, but is retired. How are you doing this? Who's living in your house with you? She's like, just my grandson. Occasionally, one of my sons has stopped by, but it's just the 2 of us for the most part. I'm like, how are regular South Carolinians, like little Miss Ruth Johnson on Pine Sap Drive, paying $400 to $500 power bills? I know the winter is harsh, but it's South Carolina. It's never that harsh. So when I hear about rate increases like this, rate increases that would take bills like that and add more to it, that would add almost 5.68, almost 6% to her bill. That has impact. That's going to hurt even more to little old retirees like Miss Ruth. And secondly, I want to tell you guys about someone else that isn't able to testify today because she is week and a half from retirement right now, working as a teacher's aide down in Charleston. My mother-in-law is Jacqueline Levine. She is also, she's, like I mentioned before, getting ready for retirement, getting ready for all of her bills to be fixed, getting ready, trying to have as much as possible squared away. And the one variable that she can't control are the rates of her power. She's a Dominion customer down there in the Low Country. And these we've already had rates go up 11% in the last year, in the last, 13 months or so. And if this rate increase were to go through, what would be closer to 17% that rates have went up? I understand that fuel costs have changed. I understand that they're variable. But why do they have to be variable? Why do we have to rely on resources that can fluctuate that wildly? Why do ratepayers have to bear the brunt of the decisions that aren't being made by ratepayers? I know that I didn't build a gas plant. I know that, and I want to provide this testimony just to show the impact on just to the people that are close to me of these bills. They hurt me too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a fan of, you know, when that Dominion bill comes. I think I might be a day late paying one, but because today's 20. Yes, I should have paid my bill yesterday. I will do that when I get home. But these bills impact me as well. But it's the folks like, you know, the Miss Ruths or the Miss Jackies that it has some of the most acute impacts on. I've met folks who have to make tough decisions around these power bills, who have to decide what's getting paid this week. So my own mother, she's not a Duke customer, but she has her own struggles with power bills over in Florence County, and it's a family effort to pitch in to make sure the family house still has power on. So it's more folks in this state than not, I feel, that can't just effortlessly pay a bill for a utility that is essential for their day-to-day life. It's not like we can, you know, just not pay, like not use Dominion or a utility like that. We have to pay these bills. We need them for, like, we need power to live our lives. I can't even think if I could live, I don't think I can live a day without, in a normal day without, like, camping, without using power. So for such, that's a necessity. It needs to be affordable. It needs to be attainable, and it needs to be not something that's causing an undue amount of pain, strife, and hardship on South Carolinians. Sorry if I'm like having diarrhea with the mouth, so I apologize in advance, and sorry for that visual. Ugh. But I just,
It's okay, Mr. Black.
I just want to just impress that these rate increases, well, I understand that they're from fuel costs. I understand that, you know, the price of some things have gone up and Dominion is passing along that increase. But that increase hurts. And it's not, we didn't decide to use these sources that require this increase. Like, no one told them to buy a Hummer and for us to, and when we're stuck with the bill for fueling it up. So, like, why not take advantage of some of the better resources? Well, in my opinion, better resources for our wallets. Like, we have a bunch of sun. This is a hot state. Y'all can see my water bill in the summer when it comes to keeping the grass not burnt to a crisp. We have a lot of sun in South Carolina. We should use that. But I might be just going on and on at this point. I know I have 3 minutes, and I'm not trying to fill every single square moment of it. But yeah, these bills are insane. They've gone up. If this were to go through, it would be a 17% total increase since the beginning of 2022. And yeah, stuff is hard enough as it is. Like, bills are going up. Like, I know y'all know the price of egg. Well, I suspect y'all know how high eggs have gone. That's just like as a benchmark of random staples increasing. We're paying more for everything. We can't afford to also be paying, you know, getting close to 20% higher bills in under 2 years from Dominion.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Hold just a second. Let's see if there are any questions. Mr. Burgess?
Mr. Black, I'm Chad Burgess. I'm Dominion Energy's lawyer. How are you today, sir?
I'm all right.
I heard you mention two names, and I wanted to make sure I had them correct. Ruth Johnson was the first name I heard, and you indicated that she had some high power bills, and I wanted you to know we're going to contact Ms. Johnson, and we're going to talk to her about that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. The other one I heard you say was Jacqueline Levine. I thought I heard you say, but I want to make sure I had that right. Did I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Black, I need you to talk into that microphone.
Oh, my apologies. Yes, those names are correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Black, for your testimony, and thank you for identifying those two customers for us. We will reach out to them and see what we can do to help them. So thank you again for bringing that to our attention.
Questions from parties for this witness? Commissioners, Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Black, for being here today. Ms. Ruth that you mentioned, is there anything about her house that you notice, or any necessary repairs or things that would make you think if you fix this, it'll help a lot, or anything you noticed?
Oh no, and I quizzed her on that. Was supposed to be a third generation electrician, but so like I was asked like what type of appliances they're using, the standard appliances that were around for the last 10 years. Her house doesn't have any massive leaks outside of the fact that her fireplace doesn't work. Like she has a gas fireplace that she never uses. It's a standard maybe 2,200 square foot brick ranch. It's nothing. It's not tiny, but it's not a massive house, and it's not an older home either. It was built um, in the early 2000s. So for her house to have these, I can't say exactly how her power bill is that high, but I've ruled out all the usual suspects that I would suspect. It's not a mobile home that is in like leaking power. It's not, busted windows, and it's a home in good repair. She won yard of the month. Like she keeps her house in order. I was trying to say like so. For her to have this insane power bill, it's just raised way more questions, especially since I was able to rule out some of the usual suspects when it came to massive power loss. I mean, massive heat and power loss.
Well, Mr. Black, the more we have these public hearings, the more I've heard of neighbors helping neighbors. And, I mean, you're not coming here particularly complaining about your bill. You're talking about other people. And I admire you very much for that. And thank you for doing that and looking out for other people. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Caston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Black, thank you for coming. And I did notice that Miss Board almost scared you to death a little while ago. She does that to me sometimes too, just sneaks up on you. How were you made aware of this hearing? Did you notice it in a bill stuffer, or what? How did you become aware of the hearing?
So I heard about it from some of my friends. So it was brought to my attention. I can't say that I learned about it from like Dominion. I'm sure somewhere there must have been some fine print that said that this was coming up, but I was made aware by by a friend, and I do a lot of I wear a lot of hats. I know what 30-year-old doesn't, but like one of those hats is I'm a realtor. So one of my friends in the I've been talking to other folks that are involved in the housing industry, and wait, there's a what going on? So it's like I do a lot of things, but I can't say that I've heard about this outside of hearing something from a friend that I think she works with, she volunteers at that mutual aid group that was mentioned a little bit earlier. So I was made aware, not from seen in the newspaper or a bill stuffer, and I'm going to go home and check my bills, because I think about it, I can't. Yeah, I learned about this, I guess, not through the way that is mandated. Let's say I heard about initially after I did my research, I learned, of course, more about this case, but yeah, I didn't open my bill and see proposed rate increase. But I don't want to say it couldn't have been in there. When you were talking to the last young lady. Yeah, I was thinking did I see a bill stuffer? Was there something in there? But I can't say with 100% certainty that it wasn't in there or anything. But yeah, I didn't get an email in my Dominion inbox or something like that on the website, or if it was in there, I didn't hear about it from them.
I understand, but the good thing is you're here today, and that's no easy task for most people to come and sit down in front of folks and do what you did. I applaud that, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Black.
Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Thank you. Mr. Black, thank you for being here. I'm going to pick up on Commissioner Caston's question and just have one for you. Do you have any suggestions for how the company could have gotten your attention about this request?
Just as big as the print saying that I have to pay $200-something bill this month. I'd like that same like maybe not the stuffer, just send me a complete. If it's an envelope, send me a complete mailer saying there's a rate increase coming. I don't think they're that common. Well, seems like it. I don't think they're common enough that that it would be a massive cost. So like instead of just like stuffing something in the side that might be sequestered to a small page, like send more information, send larger information, not just a stuffer. Give me a whole piece of paper. I'm not sure if that's allowed to ask, a full 8.5 by 11, but I'd like to have been clued in without having to, like, hunt through the interwebs and find out how to work that website. No shots at y'all's website. It's a docket system. It works well as it is. But yeah, I had to learn how to use that.
Thank you for those ideas. I think I don't remember the number, but we would all be surprised at what it does cost to share that kind of information. But it's a challenge, and appreciate your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any further questions? Mr. Black, thank you for being here today, for taking your time to give us your thoughts on this case. We certainly appreciate your testimony.
Chair Belzer?
Oh, I apologize. Commissioner Williams, Justin Williams.
No, that's fine. Mr. Black, how are you doing today?
I'm all right.
I want to compliment you on your storytelling. I enjoyed hearing about the two ladies that you shared with us. And I also want to give you kudos for coming, because I truly believe that Mr. Burgess is going to reach out to the fine lady who has that exorbitant monthly bill and figure out what's going on. A couple of questions for you. When you say make other decisions regarding the fuel used to provide electricity, do you have any specific thoughts on what decisions should have been made as opposed to natural gas?
Well, I am a strong proponent of just clean energy. I understand that I'm not the smartest person in the world when it comes to energy generation and stuff like that. But when you don't have to pay for the fuel, if it's, solar energy, that's a lot cheaper. So if I think that it would be like a great idea, at least in my envisioning, if we were to use cleaner energy, to use more renewable energy, so that we don't have to worry about getting something from out of state. So I don't think we have any natural gas in South Carolina. So why rely on another state when we got all the sun we need here? Too much sun, way too much sun. But yeah.
Okay. And so you mentioned, so I imagine you understand that the fuel, natural gas, in this instance, can be a bit volatile at times. The price goes up and down, and may be somewhat hard to predict. You accept that, right?
Oh yes, I understand it can be pretty volatile, and also getting it into South Carolina has its own issues. I'm from the PD, and I know, like, for example, any new pipelines have a good chance of coming through the areas that I call home originally. I'm from the, kind of vulnerable populations and areas in the PD, and when gas lines come through, they go through the areas that, people that don't have as much political power live in.
I understand. So I'm just going to walk through a pretty simple, what I would consider simple scenario for you. And I understand that there are some health benefits connected to renewable energy. At least that's what some studies show, and some health detriments connected to the use of fossil fuels. Again, that's what some studies show or suggest. But setting the health benefits or detriments aside, if natural gas or any fossil fuel was able to reduce the cost of energy as compared to a transition to what is considered clean energy. Do you think the two fine ladies you talked about today would rather have clean energy, even if it meant their monthly bill would be more expensive?
So, well, not to speak too much for someone that's not me, but both of the individuals, for example, I spoke with are educators. Have worked with young children, and having seen what can happen with a lot of like frontline communities here, in, not well, frontline communities and what the health impacts of having like those plants nearby, I think that they would prefer clean like hmm, higher bills are higher bills. I can't say that and say anyone would be willing to take on a higher bill, but a higher bill for something that's ultimately helping our state, that's one thing versus, a higher bill that does nothing but kind of tie us into maybe future higher bills. Um, or and whatever happens with natural gas in the future. I know that like hopefully it goes down, just like interest rates on houses. Hopefully those go down, but if they don't, then we're still stuck with natural gas. We're still stuck with this volatile fuel that could jump up in price or go higher. So I know that my mother-in-law wants a bill that she can rely on. She wants a bill that doesn't fluctuate wildly so she can marshal her resources and know what's what at the end of the month because a fixed income is a fixed income. And unless the sun stops shining at a regular rate, she'll know what her power bill will be if let's say if there wasn't so much there was more solar in the mix.
Understood. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you coming in, providing your testimony and sharing your experiences with us.
Sorry about all the rambling, but thank you.
Commissioners, any further questions? Mr. Black, again, thank you for being here. We certainly appreciate your testimony, and you can step down as a witness. You're welcome to stay and watch, or you're welcome to leave. It's your prerogative. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
I believe we have another public witness. Is it Ms. Wetzel? Can you reach that? There you go. Thank you, ma'am.
I think so.
Would you state your name for me?
My name is Linda Elaine Haynes Wetzel.
Okay, Ms. Wetzel, I'm going to ask that the court reporter, this lady right down in front, that she swear you in as a witness. You turned your mic off.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And Ms. Wetzel, if you could answer a couple of questions for me, would you give us your street, not your house number, and the town you live in?
Atlantic Street, Somerville, South Carolina.
And you're a Dominion Energy customer?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Ms. Wetzel, you may certainly give your testimony at this point. Thank you very much.
My problem is that I have been talking to Marvin Pendarvis. I'm an active member in my community. I go to my city council meetings and I go to my county council meetings. Why did Dominion Energy close the office that we go pay our bills and we can give a report or tell them what's going on? If we're having a problem, we don't have an office to go to anymore. And I kept talking to Mr. Pendarvis and asking him, and he said, well, I'll work on it. I've talked to Joe Jefferson. I've talked to Sean Bennett, James Clyburn. I've been contacting all these offices to try to find out what's going on. I cannot afford to go to Walmart every time to pay my phone, to pay the light bill. They only accept cash. There's no customer service there to talk to let them know that you're having a problem with your bill or something happened with your, my problem was I had that freeze we had in January of 2023, the water line burst. The hot water heater kept running and running, and I was not aware of it, and I had to pay for that. I paid that bill. I paid for my light bill, but then I called them and asked them to prorate it or give me a break because my bill ran up to over $300. My bill is usually about $150, and I don't have all these computers. All I have is I have a 2-bedroom house. I don't have electronic things, stereo or whatever else you think the bill is going to be going up. I just live alone with electricity for TV, electricity for lights, and the gas meter for the gas water heater for heating my water when I take a bath. I do not even wash my clothes with hot water. I use cold water with everything. And all of a sudden my bill ran up because I didn't know that I had a problem with my hot water heater. And it was just kept running and running and running. And so the guy came and he checked it. I paid him. I went to CPW, which is South Carolina Public Water Works. They showed, I have a copy of it where the leak was fixed, and they prorated and gave me a break on my bill. And I called Dominion Energy. I was on the phone for an hour on customer service waiting for service. And they told me that they would have somebody to call me back. I talked to 2 different people, and nobody returned. I'm still waiting for that phone call from Dominion Energy. Nobody ever called me back. And I kept calling the Jefferson. I kept calling Sean Bennett, and then they told me about this public service meeting. I called them, and they told me what to do, and I came up here. I have a copy of several bills that my bill is $122. This was January 19th, 2021. I got a copy of another bill, December 15th, 2022. That bill was only about $109. And February 15th, 2022, $156. But then all of a sudden, the bill for this year was almost $300. Was over $300. How can that happen? There was a problem. I fixed it. All I did was call them to try to talk to someone to give me a break on my light bill. Dominion Energy. I'm sorry. They don't respect nobody. Or I see on TV all the time about they donate money for this charity, donate money for that charity, they donate money for all other things else, but then they don't talk to you or they don't help you out when you have a problem. Where is my help? Dominion Energy is the only one in our area that we have electricity with or gas or bill with. I don't live in Berkeley County. The breaks and stuff that they be having, not breaks, but the companies from Berkeley County, that's a different company. I live in Somerville, South Carolina, and Dominion Energy does not respect us.
Thank you, Ms. Wetzel.
I've had another senior citizens, they be coming to me telling me about, I'm having a problem with my light bill. Dominion Energy charging them $18 for a service charge when the man doesn't even need a service charge in his house.
Ms. Wetzel, you drove from Somerville today?
Yes, ma'am. I drove from Somerville this morning.
To come to this hearing?
I sure did.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. Let me see if there are any questions. Questions for this witness?
Ms. Wetzel, my name is Chad Burgess, and Somerville is my hometown. So I thank you for coming up here. I do want to let you know one thing. Do you have a pen or pencil handy so I can give you a telephone number? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
I'm telephoned out.
I understand. Dominion Energy South Carolina, they're trying to find your account. So one thing that they are waiting on is for your phone call, and I'm going to give you that number. Right, I've got a pen. I'm going to write it down for you. I'm going to give it to you. They know you're calling. As soon as you dial that number, if you have a cell phone, they're going to pick that up and they're going to address your issue that you just brought to our attention. So thank you for your testimony. I do appreciate that. And I'll hand you this piece of paper before you step down from the witness stand.
Thank you.
Any other parties? Ms. Given.
Madam Chair, just briefly, we'd like to...
Ms. Wetzel, It's this lady back here, if you want to
Ms.
kind of look
Wetzel,
at her.
Hi. Hi, I'm Nicole Given. I am an attorney with the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff. We are an agency separate and apart from the Public Service Commission, and we have a consumer services division. I'd like to talk to you after you step down and give your giving your testimony, and I'll provide you with the number for consumer services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Given. Any questions for this witness, commissioners?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Justin Williams? He's going to be on the screen, ma'am. He's
Ms.
remote.
Wetzel,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Williams, you're on the line.
Ms. Wetzel,
Yes, sir.
thank you for coming here today. I'm sorry you had to travel from Somerville, but what I'm seeing in the hearing room, even though I'm not there, I'm seeing that the system to a certain degree is working, in that Dominion's going to reach out to you and the Office of Regulatory Staff. I just want you to know that you're not by yourself. There's a huge energy burden in South Carolina, and the impact of that burden depends on where you are on that socioeconomic spectrum. And it seems that you've been through a lot, but one thing I appreciate is your commitment to advocate for yourself by working through your local politicians and exercising your right to speak here today. So I just want to thank you for that. You give me hope. And I'm sure there's others in your communities you can advocate for and let them know that even though you had to drive from Somerville, you were able to get some answers to some questions and some help. And I just want to make sure there's not anything else that we need to hear from you. I heard you say there's a question about the local bill paying office or the local office where you used to pay your bill. Is there anything else specifically related to Dominion Energy you need some help on?
Not any other not any other help. It's just that if we get an office just to be there for senior citizens. I'm 70 years old, and it's hard for me to walk the parking lot of Walmart to be going into their office, and they'd be so busy, and the senior citizens need help. The gentleman that I was talking about, he would bring his bills to me every other month, showing me about how high his bill is, and he needed help with his bill. And there are others out there, but they can't afford to talk. They don't want to talk because they don't want to get everybody in their business or whatever what's going on. But be compassionate, be human. The world has changed, and we need help. Just because Dominion, they're not even in South Carolina, they're in Virginia or wherever they are. They don't know what happens in Somerville. They don't know what happens in Charleston. They don't know what happens in Ridgeville or St. George or Sand Hill. There's a lot of stuff in that Dominion Energy or these companies. If you give the other charities, think about the people who are in these towns who need a lot of help, and you just ignore us. And you're not the only one, Dominion Energy. There are a lot of companies. They're coming in. South Carolina is selling their state away. All these fly-by-night companies say they want to help us. They want to help us, but there is no help. They're in it for themselves. They're tax breaks. Some companies get 20 years tax breaks, and that's not fair. Where is our tax break? Something has to be done.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you and tell you I'm limited in what I can do, but whatever it is that we can help you with at the commission, access to information, pointing you in the right direction, in addition to making good decisions on the cases that come before us. I know that my colleagues and I are committed to doing that. Thank you again for coming today, and I appreciate the sacrifice you made to be here and the humility in sharing your story with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for this witness?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. And Ms. Wetzel, thank you for being here today and sharing this information with us. I had a question in connection with, you were talking about Walmart and paying your bill there. And I believe I heard you say that you have to pay in cash. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And is there a service charge in addition if you pay your bill?
I've never done it. I've always mailed my check in as soon as I got it.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions? Ms. Wetzel? Thank you very much for being here today. We certainly appreciate your heartfelt testimony and appreciate you making that trip from Somerville to Columbia. I believe Mr. Burgess is going to give you a phone number and Ms. Givens is going to talk to you and tell you if you ever have issues with contacting Dominion, contact the Office of Regulatory Staff. They have a consumer services department and they'll help you. Now, people are usually supposed to contact the company before they contact ORS. But if you can't get the company, contact ORS.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And safe travels to you going home. Are there any other public witnesses today, Ms. Boyd? Okay. Thank you. Just a moment. We've been going not quite an hour and 30 minutes, but why don't we take a 10-minute break before we get into the testimony from the party's witnesses, if we could. We'll be back at 11:30. Thank you. Good morning and welcome back to this proceeding of the South Carolina Public Service Commission in docket number 2023-2-E concerning the annual review of base rates for fuel cost of Dominion Energy South Carolina Incorporated. We have concluded public witnesses. Let's take a roll call of commissioners before I forget. With us virtually, we have Commissioner Irvin and Commissioner Justin Williams. And present in the hearing room, we have Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Kara Lee Williams, Commissioner Caston, and Chair Belser. Are there any preliminary matters that we need to take up before we get into witness testimony?
One preliminary matter, Madam Chair.
Ms. Gibbon?
Thank you. Madam Chair, thank you for recognizing me. Members of the Commission, good morning. Again, Nicole Gibbon appearing on behalf of the Office of Regulatory Staff. ORS, the company, and the South Carolina Energy Users Committee have entered into a stipulation resolving the issues in this case between those parties. The stipulation was filed with the Commission yesterday. ORS understands that the other parties to this docket, SACE CCL and CMC Steel, do not object to the stipulation, although they did not sign on as signatories. Through the stipulation, the company agreed to adjust its forecast. When compared to the fuel factor increase the company originally requested, the forecast adjustment resulted in an over 30% reduction of the fuel factor across customer classes, which provides the customer with some relief during a period of great economic uncertainty. The fuel factor proposed under the stipulation is also designed to recover the company's existing under-recovered fuel balance, mitigate the risk of a significant under-recovered balance in the company's next fuel proceeding, and avoid the use of a 2-year deferral and associated carrying costs. ORS supports the stipulation and believes it is in the public interest. We respectfully request that the Commission approve and adopt the stipulation in its entirety and without modification. We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today and look forward to engaging with the other parties and commissioners. At this time, I would ask that the stipulation and corresponding attachments be entered into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
The stipulation filed yesterday by the stipulating parties will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 2. Is there any objection to the stipulation coming into evidence? Hearing no objection, we will receive the stipulation into evidence as hearing exhibit number 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dominion, Mr. Burgess.
Chair Belzer, just real quick, I would add that company witness Alan Rooks will be available for questions regarding the stipulation. So if you have those, that would be the witness to direct them to. And I don't want to misspeak, Ms. Gibbons, so go right ahead.
Madam Chair, if there are questions regarding the stipulation from commissioners, ORS witness Hyatt would be the witness to provide support for the stipulation.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess and Ms. Gibbon.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Dominion Energy calls Douglas Edwards and Andrew Walker to the stand. And Chair Belzer, as these gentlemen are approaching the stand here, I did want to just make the commission aware of one matter that arose the other day. Unfortunately, company witness Henry Delk's mother passed away on Tuesday evening, and he was unavailable to testify. So we have drafted Andrew Walker into service, if you will, who will be adopting Mr. Delk's testimony, and I'll walk him through that to make sure the record is in order with regard to that piece of testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. We will certainly allow the witness to adopt Mr. Delk's testimony, and we certainly appreciate the advance notice of the situation as well. Thank you.
You're welcome, Chair Belzer.
Madam Court Reporter, will you swear the witnesses?
Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Sir, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with you, Mr. Edwards. Would you please state your full name for the record?
Douglas James Edwards, Jr.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am currently the maintenance manager for VC Summer Station for Dominion Energy, South Carolina.
And did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direct supervision and pre-filed in this docket 7 pages of direct testimony?
Yes, I have.
And are there any changes or corrections that are required of your direct testimony?
Yes, sir, there is.
All right, would you please direct the commission and the other parties of record to the page number and the line number of your testimony that requires a correction?
Yes, sir. Commissioners, on page 5 of 7, line 19, starting with the words "in addition to," through page 6, line 1, ending with "this key component," be stricken from the testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Would you please explain to the commission and the other parties why it was necessary for you to strike those 2 sentences from your pre-filed direct testimony?
The company had to make a decision based on resources available to support our refueling outage. We went through some analysis, and that included risk and benefit for the company, and decided to withdraw that item from the outage, with the understanding that we do have mitigation strategies moving forward if anything should occur to this equipment during the course of the year.
All right, thank you, Mr. Edwards. If I were to ask you all the questions contained in your pre-filed direct testimony subject to that change that you just made, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
All right, Chair Belzer, at this time, we would move into the evidence of record, the pre-filed direct testimony of Douglas Edwards as corrected from the stand, as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Edwards' pre-filed direct testimony as corrected will be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Edwards, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, I have.
Would you please deliver that at this time?
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Belzer and members of the Commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to review with the Commission the operating performance of VC Summer Nuclear Station during the review period January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022. The company's primary objective is to strive for excellence in all phases of the facility's operations that is reflected in the outstanding service record for VC Summer. The station's key focus areas of safety, reliability, outage and work management, workforce development, and organizational effectiveness constitute the company's core business plan elements. These objectives also focus on maintaining a competitive production cost for the generation of electricity using nuclear fuel. VC Summer performed well during the review period. DESC continuously meets or exceeds all NRC requirements and IMPO standards, and I'm pleased to report that IMPO rated VC Summer's overall performance as exemplary, which is the highest achievable rating that a plant can receive. The NRC is responsible for licensing and oversight of civilian use of nuclear materials in the United States. During the review period, the NRC reported that VC Summer operated in a manner that preserved public health and safety and fully met all cornerstone objectives. Consistent with the provisions of South Carolina law, VC Summer's net capacity factor, based on reasonable excludable nuclear systems reductions during the review period, was 102.17%, and gross generation output totaled 8,934,661 megawatt hours. As for plant outages, VC Summer did not have any planned outages during the review period, but it did experience one mid-cycle unplanned maintenance outage during the review period. More specifically, on January 10th, 2022, VC Summer operators, during a routine inspection, discovered the center phase on the main transformer isophase bus duct air boot, which I will refer to as the assembly, had dislodged itself from the main transformer. On February 2nd, 2022, at 12:27 p.m., the company opened the main generator breaker and brought VC Summer offline to safely repair the assembly. With the plant offline, DESC reinstalled the assembly, and after repairs and testing, The outage ended with the closure of the generator breaker on February 4th, 2022 at 2:21 p.m. and the plant returned to service. Turning to spent fuel. VC summer used fuel storage capacity consists of spent fuel pool and dry cask storage facility, which has been designed to accommodate storage of all fuel use for the life of the plant. During February and March of 2022, DESC successfully completed its efforts of loading, processing, and transferring used fuel from the spent fuel pool to the dry cask storage facility. From start to finish, this process took 18 days, which occurred over a 4-week period, and the next such transfer is scheduled for fall of 2025. This concludes a summary of my direct testimony.
All right, thank you, Mr. Edwards. Mr. Walker, I'll turn to you next. Would you please state your full name for the record?
Andrew R. Walker.
And Mr. Walker, before we get started, you did not know until yesterday that you were going to testify today, is that right?
That's correct.
And this is your first time testifying before the commission, correct?
This is the first time that I'm testifying in person before the commission, yes.
Okay, so get comfortable and let me have all the nerves, okay? I'll be nervous for the both of us. Mr. Walker, by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy South Carolina as Strategic Advisor, Power Generation.
All right, and would you briefly describe your education and your professional experience to the commission?
Yes. I graduated from Clemson University in December 2009 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering and earned a Master of Public Administration from the University of South Carolina in May of 2012. I began my career with Dominion Energy South Carolina, then South Carolina Electric and Gas Company, in February 2010 at the company's Watery Station as a Facilities Operations Engineer. In January 2016, I was promoted to the position of Supervisor, Air Quality Controls, where I managed a team of engineers across the company's Arthur M. Williams, Watery, and coal-fired power generation stations, with responsibilities for oversight of the operation and maintenance of the air pollution control equipment at those facilities. In August 2019, I transitioned into a developmental role as a consulting engineer reporting to the Director of Power Generation Operations with an array of responsibilities, including new generation project development, interfacing with the company's resource planning group, representing power generation and merger integration activities with our sister utilities operations in Virginia, and managing the company's relationship with the Electric Power Research Institute, commonly referred to as EPRI. In my current capacity as Strategic Advisor, I report directly to the Vice President of Power Generation for DESC. My role with the company is specifically aligned around identifying, leading, and coordinating strategic initiatives to support the company's commitment to net zero carbon by 2050, which includes modernization of the company's power generation fleet, incorporating additional solar and renewable resources, replacing aged generation facilities, and leading the development of new generation facilities in support of these needs and the company's integrated resource plan. In this role, I work closely and on a daily basis with various departments, including the power generation operations and technical services and engineering groups, resource planning, fuel and commodity supply, electric transmission planning, and wholesale power business development and procurement.
All right, Mr. Walker, are you aware that Henry Delk prepared or caused to be prepared under his direct supervision and pre-filed in this docket 29 pages of direct testimony?
I am.
Mr. Burgess, I hate to interrupt, but could I ask the witness to pull that microphone a little bit closer?
Yes,
just to
ma'am.
make sure that our commissioners virtually can hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Walker, have you read the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Delk?
I have.
And are you willing to accept the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Delk as if it were your own?
I am.
Okay. Now that the testimony is yours, Mr. Walker, do you have any changes or corrections that are required of your testimony?
I do not.
And if I ask you all the questions contained in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
They would.
Chair Belzer, at this time, we would move into the evidence of record, the pre-filed direct testimony of Henry Delk as adopted by Mr. Walker as if given orally from the stand.
The pre-filed testimony of Mr. Delk as adopted by witness Walker will be read into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Walker, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
I have.
Would you please deliver that at this time?
Yes. Good morning, Chair Belzer and members of the Commission. My testimony describes the operating performance of the company's non-nuclear power generation units, including GenCo's Williams Station, during the review period of January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. During the review period, there were changes to the company's non-nuclear generating facilities, including the retirement of 3 simple cycle combustion turbine units and the completion of advanced gas path upgrades on the company's combined cycle units. With these changes, the total non-nuclear power generation capacity for summer and winter seasons increased to 5,007 megawatts and 5,247 megawatts, respectively. To evaluate the performance of its non-nuclear power generation facilities, the company uses the availability and forced outage factors as reported to the North American Electric Reliability Corporation's Generating Availability Data System, commonly known as NERC-GADS. As demonstrated by the availability and forced outage factors in my pre-filed direct testimony, the company's non-nuclear power generation facilities operated efficiently and dependably during the review period. Notably, the factors included the impacts from Water Unit 2 being out of service for the first 4 months of 2022. The Commission will recall that Water Unit 2 was previously in a significant forced outage that began in February of 2020. During the review period, Water Unit 2 returned to service and was thereafter available for service for the 2022 peak summer months. The company experienced 6 major planned outages and 4 significant forced outages during the review period. The 6 major planned outages occurred in spring 2022 at Columbia Energy Center, Jasper Station, Water Unit 1, and fall 2022 at Columbia Energy Center, McMeekin Station, and Williams Station. The significant forced outages occurred at McMeekin Unit 1 in January of 2022, Water Unit 2 in May of 2022, Cope Station in August 2022, and in November 2022. While the outages that occurred during Winter Storm Elliott did not meet the company's definition of a significant forced outage, the storm itself was a noteworthy event during the review period. Some of the company's non-nuclear generating units experienced forced outages as a result of Winter Storm Elliott. It is important to note, however, that not all of the forced outages during the winter storm were weather-related, and most of the company's non-nuclear generating fleet performed exceptionally well despite the extreme challenges imposed by the bitterly cold temperatures and high winds experienced on our system, as well as other neighboring systems throughout the region. My pre-filed direct testimony outlines the outages the company experienced during Winter Storm Elliott, as well as the company's actions in preparation ahead of and then during the storm. Overall, the company's non-nuclear power generation units operated efficiently and dependably during the review period, as demonstrated by the availability and forced outage factors outlined in my pre-filed direct testimony. Further, the company's heat rates for its combined cycle units and coal-fired steam units during the review period were in line with national averages as reported to publicly available databases. In conclusion, the company believes that the operating performance of its non-nuclear power generation units was reasonable and prudent for the review period. Thank you for your time. This completes the summary of my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Chair Belzer, Mr. Edwards and Mr. Walker are available for cross-examination by counsel for CCL and SACE as the non-signatory parties to the stipulation, as well as examination by the commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Burgess. Ms. Mixon or Ms. Clancy?
No questions.
Due to the stipulation, I'm not going to call on other parties, so if I miss somebody, you just need to get my attention, okay? Commissioners, Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Edwards, first I had a couple of questions for you. Particularly having looked at your military experience, nuclear submarine, that's something else. And I know you probably keep a close eye on things worldwide, particularly with the military, and would have that sort of interest. And I know you're not in procurement, and I know there's another witness that is, but I was concerned, what about, you talk about storage of used fuel, what about storage of unused fuel? What sort of what does Dominion do with that? Or can you store unused fuel?
So with regards to unused fuel, that we at VC Summer, we receive approximately 48 new fuel assemblies prior to a refueling outage, and that's to recoup the burn off from the other fuel assemblies that are in the core, which is totaled of 157 assemblies. So we store those in the spent fuel pool along with the other remaining used fuel assemblies.
Well, and I'm not talking about hedging, but in some testimony in several different dockets, I keep seeing things about it seems to be a lot of speculation about Ukraine affecting cost and different things based upon the lack of confidence or the concern that, you know, the war will continue, et cetera. With our country and other countries getting involved now, do you see the situation in Ukraine getting any better anytime soon?
It would be a speculation, sir. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. Well, let's assume that it's not getting better, that the relationship between the United States and Russia is not getting better. Knowing that, would there not be reason to go ahead before prices keep going up, to obtain more nuclear fuel and to store it before prices do go up? Or would that be you consider that a gamble?
So the company has specific folks that look specifically at the procurement of nuclear fuels. I really don't get involved in that. All I know is that I review current fuel loads and future fuel loads as they are designed, and I have not heard of any opportunities that we would not be able to fulfill that.
Okay. Would you have, say you did say, well, let's double up, let's get some more just before things get worse. Would you have capacity for storage of more unused fuel at this point?
We do have the ability to store the fuel. If it's new fuel, it does not have to necessarily be stored in a pool. You have storage racks, and even the manufacturer itself can store that fuel. So I think that the ability is there, but again, that's out of my preview, really.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Just a little follow-up on the nuclear fuel. Seems like a year or so ago I was asking someone a question about are you in good shape? Do you have plenty of supply on hand? And the response that I received is that one of the things that good outcomes of the failed nuclear plant is that there was a lot of fuel on hand already, and that that was going to put the company in good shape for a good while. Does that conversation sound familiar to you, or can you kind of bring me up to date on that? Is that
So, Commissioner Thomas, that does sound familiar to me. Again, I don't recall the specific details. I wasn't including those meetings, but I was to the understanding that what you said is does have value to what you were saying. Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Walker. So I'm looking at the looking at the outages, and one of the ones that looked a little bit strange to me, it was the natural gas unit. It was the Jasper 1 unit that was taken down on January the 26th for a planned spring outage. And it just seemed to me that that's a little bit early to be taking a unit out for a planned spring outage. And the only reason that really raises a question for me is that obviously we saw the unusual event that happened around Christmas time. But it just seems to me that you could just about have some sort of an unusual event like that in late February, and just wondered if that was not just a little bit early to be taking a plant out for a planned outage. Just if you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Commissioner Thomas, I can speak to our general maintenance philosophy is that the peak winter months that we try to avoid outages being scheduled in under our long-term planning are the months of December, January, and February. So February 26th, the very end of the month of February, I would say we monitor system conditions in real time before we take any unit offline. So if there's, you know, in a 7 or 10 day forecast where there's an exceptionally cold period coming before we're scheduled to take a unit offline, we have deferred taking off units in advance of cold weather in the winter season. And conversely, in the summer season, we treat the months of May, June, July, August as kind of our peak summer months, of more so June, July, August of after the Memorial Day holiday. There's been times that we've tried to pull in outages in the May time frame, complete them as early as possible if we see high loads coming in the summer period.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that, and appreciate you being here and stepping in at the last minute. I know that that's a little bit of a difficult task, and thank you. Doing great. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Carol Lee Williams, I think I saw your light come on a minute ago.
Thank you. Chair Belzer. Thank you for being here. My first question is a redo, and it is for Mr. Edwards. You covered the elimination of some lines from your testimony. Would you cover that again? Because as I read those lines, and I read the line about resolve existing obsolescence issues, you know, it just struck me as important enough that I wanted to understand what you said.
I appreciate that. So I guess the concern would be for the obsolescence piece to that. I tell you that part of our strategies, if we have to defer items or reschedule items, we have what's called a bridging strategy that we create. And that bridging strategy includes items such as more direct monitoring of those components, as well as having ready supply of replacement components should something occur. So we ensured that those things were in place, and we reviewed the bridging strategy to ensure that we could sustain that equipment's performance throughout the time until such time we could do that replacement.
And do you have a prediction for that replacement?
Well, currently, the way we perform outages is we have what's called alpha train and bravo train outages. So we'll work half of the equipment or one side of the equipment in one outage, and then the next in the following outage. So this outage is a bravo train outage, which would have supported this diesel exciter replacement. The next outage will be an alpha train outage. So the one following that is when we're currently scheduled. I will also add that if this equipment did fail on us, we do have the means to perform this this maintenance activity while we're online. So we have about a 14-day window that we can perform that, and we feel assured that we can perform that activity if necessary.
Thank you. I appreciate the detail. It helps me to understand it a little bit better.
Thank you.
I think I may come back with further questions, but I'm going to close for now.
Thank you,
Chair Belzer.
Commissioner Caston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon now, according to my clock. And if both you gentlemen, either you gentlemen, will give Mr. Delk my sympathies and condolences. I know what it's like to lose your mama.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Give me a minute. I also noticed, well, I knew this. I knew Mr. Delk was a Clemson graduate, mechanical engineer, and I think I heard you say you were. Now, is that just coincidence, or is that?
It is.
No, you don't have to.
It is purely coincidence of, I started my career in the generation business unit of Mr. Delk came over to our business unit, I think about 7 or so years ago, and we are able to bond over that shared part of our history.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if they were upgrading staff or, I wasn't sure. I'm teasing. Your title that you gave, I think it was strategic advisor, and I was writing, and as I was writing, I couldn't pay attention. So kind of tell me again, what is it that you do?
Certainly. So recently, I've transitioned into this role as a strategic advisor for our business unit. Prior to that, I was a consulting engineer, was how I was titled, and I reported directly to Mr. Delk. I now report directly to our Vice President, Iris Griffin, inside the power generation group. I've been engaged for the last several years on modernization efforts for the company's generating fleet. I've pre-filed testimony as well as recently supplemental testimony and docket 2021-93E around the company's plans to replace certain peaking assets of, we've recently concluded a process as part of the partial settlement in that docket to move forward with the next round of those modernizations, but that's a key piece of my responsibilities, but I also work very closely with our operations team under Mr. Delk's organization, assisting with their needs from a fleet perspective, supporting benchmarking activities, supporting interface with our sister operations in Virginia, best practices. I've got a lot of different hats that I wear day in and day out, but I'm kind of a wide angle lens is probably the best way to think of it these days in the role that I'm in inside the business unit.
Never heard that one, wide angle lens, but I like that. I did hear, I thought you said something about the corporate goals or something related to the corporate goals, and I wasn't real sure exactly. Do you have some role in that, or what is?
Yes, sir. So the Dominion Energy Incorporated has a net zero goal to achieve by 2050 across the enterprise. I think that's been discussed at length in the Integrated Resource Plan proceedings. So DESC is being part of that footprint we're part of trying to achieve that overall goal. So my role is specifically aligned around identifying the opportunities for how we use our existing assets, but also transition as necessary by constructing new replacement assets, modifying existing assets to support that goal and the energy transition.
Okay, and since you kind of breached that subject, let me dig just a little bit deeper if I can. Relative to the, I guess, generation fleet, do all your facilities, your generation facilities, meet all federal and state emission standards?
We meet all current federal emission standards and state and local standards in the operation of our facilities. And we do actively monitor ongoing rulemakings for potential future regulations, and those feed into our long-term resource planning efforts.
Okay. I guess what I was thinking after hearing this, and it seems like in a previous hearing, Dominion hearing, similar topic seemed like got brought up, relative to corporate goals. And I was, just thinking relative to Dominion Energy South Carolina, which is in the state of South Carolina, which has a certain specific, set of statutes. How does Dominion balance, I guess, maybe their corporate goals relative to carbon or whatever, and, coal generation, whatever it might be, and South Carolina's laws?
It's a great question, Commissioner. So the net zero goal, I think it's important to understand it is across the entire DEI enterprise. So that's utility operations in Virginia, South Carolina, as well as extending to our local gas distribution companies out in Utah, Wyoming, Ohio, North Carolina. So it's across an entire spectrum of companies, operations, both electric as well as gas, and in different jurisdictions. But if I'm understanding your question, is kind of how is the congruence between that goal as an enterprise with current statute in South Carolina, the current regulatory construct of that's discussed, I think, quite a bit in the Integrated Resource Plan proceedings of that we put forward plans that model sensitivities to potential future carbon legislation or pricing to understand what those different portfolios of generation may look like under different scenarios. But at this time, there is no cost assigned to carbon emissions inside of South Carolina or at a federal level. So it does make planning challenging because I believe most utilities, at least most investor-owned utilities, have investor-driven goals around net zero or reducing carbon emissions, that there's a view across industry that additional regulations are likely coming in that area. But it's a balance. It's ultimately a balance because I believe I heard one of the public witnesses being asked of one of the commissioners around, do you want clean energy or do you want lower costs? Of if given those two binary choices, of it's a mix and it's trying to balance those through the integrated resource planning process.
Okay, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but what I think I heard is Dominion Corporate's goals potentially could conflict with current South Carolina laws. And relative to the IRP, which I understand, you'll run various scenarios with various hypothetical, but Dominion understands that the statute relative to IRP and what occurs still have those elements, and two of those elements are reliability and least cost, and there's others. So I'm not hearing that Dominion Corporate's goals trump that, am I hearing that?
I would not characterize that as a goal that trumps of. I think it's best to consider the net zero goal as being pooled among the different operations of. And net zero, it's important to understand, does not mean absolute zero. It means getting to a point where you can net emissions through, there's various options of, carbon sequestration, of direct air capture, renewable natural gas, any number of different carbon accounting mechanisms to achieve that last increment of carbon reductions to hit what's called net zero, which is not absolute zero. So I think it's important to understand that's pooled across different jurisdictional lines, but I wouldn't say that that guides, or trumps the regulatory framework and statute in South Carolina from a planning standpoint.
All right, so when we do the whatever studies, the coal retirement studies and all these things, which are glad you guys do those things. And when we're looking at generation mix, generation sources, cost, and all those things relative to the IRP or whatever else, scenarios may be different, but corporate policy is not going to necessarily drive early retirement of a coal facility, for example, say 2028, 2030, if it's good through 2046, unless the law or something changes or is I just kind of want to, if you can't answer, don't answer. But think about that the next time we all get together. What's going to be driving those decisions?
I appreciate that feedback, Commissioner. We're getting ready to submit pre-filed testimony and the integrated resource plan proceeding here. I believe next week is when that's going to be filed. So I know I've been part of those discussions, and I believe I'm likely going to be part of that proceeding this year. I think that's going to be a great venue to discuss that.
Thank you, and I think you handled yourself admirably. Could be your training and background in education, but I'm not. Can't say that for sure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Commissioners, further questions for this panel? Mr. Burgess, any redirect?
We have no redirect, and as those witnesses are stepping down from the witness stand, there were a couple questions about nuclear fuel procurement. We've got a witness coming up. So Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Powers, there's an opportunity to head your way on those questions you asked earlier.
Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony today. You may stand down. Thank you. Mr. Gissendanner?
Dominion Energy calls Rose Jackson, Tom Brookmeyer, and Michael Shin to the stand.
Madam Court Reporter, would you swear the witnesses?
Raise your right hands, please. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Jackson, would you please state your full name for the record?
Rose Moore Jackson.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy Services Incorporated as the Director of Fuel Commodities.
Ms. Jackson, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your direction 19 pages of direct testimony that was previously filed in this docket?
Yes, sir.
And do you have any changes or corrections to that testimony?
I have just one change,
Okay,
or
would you please
one deletion.
Please share that with us.
On page 12, line 6, we found a duplicate word on that line. So if you will strike the second word, reaching, and the line should read, price reaching the high for the review period of $9.68 per decatherm in August.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. And subject to that correction, if I asked you all the questions contained in your pre-filed direct testimony here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, sir.
Chair Belzer, at this time I'll move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Ms. Jackson as corrected here today be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Ms. Jackson's pre-filed direct testimony as corrected today will be admitted into the record as if given from the stand.
And Ms. Jackson, did your pre-filed direct testimony also include an exhibit labeled as exhibit number RMJ1?
Yes, sir.
And do you have any changes or additions to your exhibit?
No, sir.
Okay, Chair Belzer, at this time I'll move as the next hearing exhibit, exhibit number RMJ1, and ask that it be entered into the record.
Ms. Jackson's exhibit RMJ1 will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 3, and hearing no objection to its admission will be admitted as hearing exhibit 3.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Ms. Jackson, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, sir, I have.
Would you please share that with us at this time?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Belzer and members of the Commission. On behalf of Dominion Energy South Carolina, or DESC, I'm appearing before you today to provide information about the natural gas purchasing process for DESC Generation, to discuss natural gas prices for the review period of January 1, 2022 through December 31st, 2022, and to offer the outlook for natural gas prices in the near term. The gas purchases made by the Gas Supply Department are driven by the needs of the Electric Generation Group. Our department provides DESC Economic Resource Commitment Group, or ERC, with current market information that can be used in the electric generation dispatch modeling to determine the most economic means of reliably meeting the electric needs of our customers. Once ERC decides that natural gas is the economical choice for providing reliable power to our customers, our department is directed to purchase gas supplies for delivery with a stated term and volume at the best available current market prices. Prices in the NYMEX natural gas commodity market began the review period at $3.82 per decatherm. The lowest NYMEX settle price during the review period occurred on January 4th, 2022 at $3.72 per decatherm, which resulted from warmer than normal temperatures in November and December of 2021. In late February, the natural gas market began to see a global connection with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Although prices did not immediately spike, the growing concern of meeting winter demands in other countries began to rise. In mid-June, an incident at a major Houston-based LNG export facility caused the facility to go offline. The outage at this export LNG facility sent prices to the summer low of $5.42 per decatherm, due to a decrease in exports. Even with the decrease in LNG exports, significant summer heat coupled with increased generation demand caused prices to increase, with a daily settle price reaching the high for the review period of $9.68 per decatherm in August. The average NYMEX daily settlement price for the review period was $6.54 per decatherm. During the review period, DESC purchased approximately 95,500,000 decatherms of natural gas for electric generation at a total cost of approximately $697 million and an approximate average price of $7.30 per decatherm. The current price forecast for the remainder of 2023 suggests natural gas prices are likely to average below $4 per decatherm. However, short-term price volatility can result from changes in either supply or demand. In conclusion, I respectfully request that the Commission find that DESC natural gas purchasing practices for electric generation were reasonable and prudent. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Brookmeyer, could you please state your full name for the record?
Tom Allen Brookmeyer.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
Employed by Dominion Energy Services Incorporated in the capacity of Manager, Nuclear Fuel Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Brookmeyer. Mr. Brookmeyer, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision 11 pages of direct testimony that was previously filed in this docket?
I did, sir.
And do you have any changes to your testimony?
I do not.
So if I asked you all the questions contained in your pre-filed direct testimony here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, sir.
Chair Belzer, at this time I'll move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Brookmeyer be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Brookmeyer's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
And thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Brookmeyer, did your pre-filed testimony also include one exhibit labeled as exhibit number TAB1?
That is correct, yes.
And do you have any changes or additions to your exhibit?
I do not.
Chair Belzer, at this time I'll move that the exhibit number TAB1 attached to the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Brookmeyer be entered into the record as the next hearing exhibit.
Mr. Brookmeyer's pre-filed exhibit attached to his direct testimony and labeled TAB1 will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 4 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Brookmeyer, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, sir.
Would you please share that with us at this time?
Certainly. Good afternoon, Chair Belzer and members of the Commission. As a manager of nuclear fuel procurement at Dominion Energy Services, my testimony focuses on three main areas related to nuclear fuel purchasing for VC Summer Nuclear Station. First, I explain the nuclear fuel purchasing process. Second, I discuss the market condition and prices for what we call the front-end components, meaning uranium conversion services and enrichment services and fuel fabrication for the period of January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. And third, I provide a near-term outlook of both spot and term prices for the front-end components. The company continues to follow its standard procurement and purchasing practices, and it currently has long-term commitments for uranium conversion services, enrichment services, and fabrication. As for market conditions and prices, the market has continued to experience increases in spot and term prices for uranium conversion and enrichment, but has not experienced significant shifts in fabrication prices. These market changes are expected to impact the company projected near-term nuclear fuel expense, but only minimally, given the company's current mix of longer-term front-end component contracts and existing inventory. In sum, the company believes it made reasonable and prudent efforts to obtain market-based prices and reliable supply for its nuclear fuel requirements at VC Summer Nuclear Station, and its nuclear fuel purchasing practices were reasonable and prudent for the review period. This concludes the summary of my direct testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Brookmeyer. Mr. Shin, would you please state your full name for the record?
Michael Davis Shin.
And Mr. Shin, by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy Services Incorporated as manager of market origination.
And Mr. Shin, did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision 28 pages of direct testimony that was previously filed with this commission in this docket?
I did.
And do you have any changes or additions to your direct testimony?
I do not.
So if I asked you all the questions contained in your pre-filed direct testimony here today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Belzer, at this time I'll move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Mr. Shin be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Shin's pre-filed direct testimony will be received into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Thank you, Chair Belzer. Mr. Shin, have you prepared a summary of your direct testimony?
I have.
Please share that with us at this time.
Good morning, Chair Belzer and members of the Commission. The purpose of my testimony is to describe the procurement and delivery of the coal No. 2 fuel oil, limestone, and associated transportation that is used in Dominion Energy South Carolina's non-nuclear power generation plants while focusing on the reliability of supply, conformity with operational and environmental requirements, and obtaining reasonable prices. I also discuss changes that have occurred in coal markets since the last annual fuel adjustment hearing and the company's mid-period fuel adjustment and how these changes affected coal procurement during the review period. Natural gas, coal, and No. 2 fuel oil prices fluctuate based on factors outside of the company's control, such as seasonality, weather conditions, increased customer demand, changes in supply and demand, fluctuations in storage inventory levels, geopolitical matters, inflation, transportation cost or delay, and other economic factors. These market conditions change frequently and impact the company's fuel purchasing strategies and the purchase price of the commodities. The company works diligently to achieve an optimization between adequate fuel supplies and reasonable purchase prices of an acceptable quality. The ultimate value of the delivered fuel, coal or No. 2 fuel oil, is determined by the actual delivered dollars per million BTU, which accounts for the amount of heat the generating plant ultimately sees from the fuel. Under usual market conditions, DESC acquires coal under a blend of long-term and short-term agreements to allow the flexibility necessary to manage its generation assets in the most cost-effective way. Managing its coal inventories in this way allows the company to purchase the most competitively priced fuel while remaining mindful that its burn rate has potential to fluctuate wildly due to market conditions and changes in the price of coal or natural gas that may result in imbalances of fuel supply and demand. Since the company provided figures in the last annual fuel adjustment hearing and the mid-period fuel adjustment, the coal and oil markets have both reduced in cost. This reduction in market prices, if they maintain the same trend, will reduce the forecasted price for each commodity. The recent receding of commodity prices reflects a warmer than normal winter and a decreased demand for coal and natural gas. This coincides with the elevated markets of 2022 led to increased commodity production of both coal and natural gas into the market. However, it should be noted that the current market price forecasts used by the company expect coal prices to remain above the level seen in recent years and will likely do so until current market conditions improve to a more stable footing. The current forecast for the cost of delivered coal is $97.70 per delivered ton for 2023 and $109.04 per delivered ton in 2024. The company projected a 2022 burn rate for coal of approximately 1,827,000 tons, but burned 1,712,404 tons of coal in the production of electricity for its customers. This amount was 10.5% lower than the amount of coal consumed in 2021. The projected burn rate for coal in 2023 is approximately 1,011,751 tons. The company has contracted for adequate coal supply to meet 2023 need through a combination of long and short-term contracts. DESC's current purchasing plan, according to the current forecast, will allow the company to rebuild its inventories to target levels. The company used these tools in support of its efforts to maintain an inventory of approximately 680,125 tons of coal during the review period based on the average of each of 12 months ending inventories to support anticipated consumption during the review period and to maintain enough coal to run each coal unit at full capacity for approximately 45 days. In contrast to the time variances inherent in coal purchasing contracts, contracts for number 2 fuel oil are requirements contracts that are competitively solicited every 2 years. In general terms, the contract's base pricing comes from market indices that adjust daily. The oil market fluctuations have impacted the company's cost for number 2 fuel oil and is expected to remain volatile. The company currently emits less than its sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide emission allowance allocated to it by the EPA. For this reason, the company was not required to purchase emission allowances during the review period and does not anticipate having to buy any emission allowances in 2023.
Mr. Shin, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm getting a signal from the back asking if you could pull that microphone a little closer. Thank you, sir.
Sure. CSX Transportation remained the primary rail transporter of coal for DESC, and the CSX contract rates were renegotiated during the review period with revised terms. The company also added rail transport capacity during the review period with Norfolk Southern to allow for additional transport capacity of coal into Wateree Station. The company did experience rail delays through the first half of the review period, but the company operated in a manner to ensure that its coal inventory for the review period and forecast period was sufficient for reliable operation. The fuel department also secures adequate and reliable supplies of environmental reagents for the operation of various pollution control systems at the company's power generation facilities. The company's purchasing strategies remain effective and market priced. In conclusion, I respectfully request that the Commission find that the company's fuel purchasing practices for coal, number 2 fuel oil, lime, ammonia, and limestone, and associated transportation were reasonable and prudent for the review period. Thank you for your time. This completes the summary of my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Shin. Chair Belzer, Ms. Jackson, Mr. Brookmeyer, and Mr. Shin are available for cross-examination and questioning by the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Gissendanner. Say CCL.
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioners. Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ms. Jackson, so can you give us a little bit of an update on what's going on with Mountain Valley Pipeline?
We got some good news yesterday, as you can see from the letter that we filed as an update for the Commission. Yesterday morning, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals published an opinion denying the petition for review in which Sierra Club and other environmental pipeline opponents challenged the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality's issuance of a Virginia Water Protection individual permit for the MVP project. So basically what that means is the 401 permit, water crossing permit in Virginia had been appealed, and the appeal was denied.
Okay, and I know you're not an attorney and I'm not an attorney, but do you think that's anywhere close to the end of the legal battles?
They still need the 401 permit for West Virginia. That application was actually filed before the Virginia application, so we anticipate that that should be resolved soon. The biological opinion was published at the end of last month. However, that opinion is still subject to appeal. So we're very close. It's 95% complete.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty. Mr. Brookmeyer, so you heard my question earlier in connection with the supplies potentially on hand at VC Summer, and just kind of wondering a little bit of an update on that. Is that still a pretty good resource, or?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Yes, I do recall that transaction last year. That was to me that you addressed those questions. The supply for VC Summer still is as was represented last year. We have adequate supplies for quite a long period of time through this decade for nuclear fuel and having it available for us to use. It's not in fabricated form, getting to previous commissioner's question, but we don't typically do that far in advance for having the fuel fabricated. But in terms of having the enriched uranium product available for use, we do have that.
Okay, so that's on hand, and that should not be impacted by what's going on in Russia. Is that correct?
Yeah, a good amount of that is on hand. Some is still under contract to be delivered, but we don't have any reason to believe that those deliveries will be suspended in any means, and that they will be delivered on time as scheduled.
Okay, and question here from a little bit of a selfish standpoint. Are you going to be having demand elsewhere on your system that you may end up sending the South Carolina supplies elsewhere?
No, we would not do that. We don't have a means to really do that across the company because we keep everything separate. So our supply for Virginia remains for Virginia, for Connecticut remains for Connecticut, and South Carolina remains that because there are different cost bases developed over time. So we keep that very distinct and separate. So no, we do not plan to transfer any nuclear material across those company divisions.
Okay, and just in connection with what's going on in Russia and the overall company's long-range plans, can you give me any idea about how things are going? Are things changing, or what are your thoughts?
Well, it certainly has made our job for nuclear fuel procurement a little more interesting, but we don't have a lot of exposure directly to the Russian supply coming in to the U.S. So our supply is primarily with other organizations from Western Supply. However, we are concerned about the decrease in Russian supply coming into the country later this decade, and because that's going to have an impact on the availability of other Western supply, the capacity type issues. So we are working with industry peers to help support additional capacity in the Western markets, and that's how we're focusing our efforts to increase capacity so that we're not reliant upon any Russian supply. And we're getting good support also from other industry participants and doing their part in increasing capacity.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that update. And Mr. Shin, I apologize, but I'm gonna give you a break.
Commissioner Caston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Shin. I guess I'll fill in that void. How's that? Actually, it's just out of curiosity, on your direct testimony, page 15, relative to, does the company create the forecast for coal prices used in your testimony's projections? You say no. And I was reading, where you utilize leading market forecasters, and at a real high level, I understand, I think, what that sentence means, but in a much more, I guess, defined area, what does that mean?
Mr. Commissioner, what that means is there's I'll pick one, Platts. It's an industry-wide publication that what they actually do is they survey different suppliers, different brokers for the going price of coal. What is it being sold at, offered at, and those types of parameters. And then they bring all that information together to publish a market price, both current and forward, for what people are actually transacting at.
Okay, so rather than having someone internally in Dominion that makes all these calls, does all this stuff, and has your own equations, you simply look at a document that's produced that is Dominion the only one that uses this?
Oh, no, sir, not at all. If any individual utility went and called somebody wanting to know what somebody was paying, they would probably not tell the truth to begin with. So that's why they do, these companies do it. It's all anonymous. There is no, I'm sure the publishing company keeps track of who gives what, but none of that is ever given out.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That was very helpful. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
You through? Are you through? Commissioner Carolee Williams?
Thank you. Ms. Jackson, you used an acronym that I might have asked you about before, but I'm going to ask again. It's SET, and it's on page 8 of your testimony.
Southeastern Trail. Make sure, page 8. Yes, ma'am. It's Southeastern Trail. That is a capacity project that came online at the beginning of the year. It was an expansion project on Transco.
Okay. Thank you very much. No further questions.
Vice Chair Powers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start with you, Ms. Jackson. How are you this morning or
Good.
afternoon?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. In your testimony, one thing on page, I think it was page 7, you talked about forecast from the NYMEX being able to forecast 12 years out. There's no purchasing that you're doing on that sort of scale of 12 years or 10 years.
No, sir, we're not. But the reason that a number of utilities rely on the NYMEX to forecast prices is that is the only forecast that you can actually go out and purchase 12 years out. There are a number of pricing forecasts out there, but you can't buy gas at those prices.
Okay. So as far as the purchasing policies that you're dealing with at this time, that would pretty much be irrelevant, would it?
Yes, sir. It just gives us guidance to see where prices may be going in the future.
Okay. And I know that as far as where everything's heading and policy and everything else, this may sound like a step backwards, but when gas prices get so high that it's such a strain, is there any way to ramp up? I don't think the coal's quite as volatile. Is there any way to ramp up that production until the prices settle down? And I know in your testimony you talked about how one of the factors affecting gas prices is the retirement of coal.
Yes, sir.
But during that process, is there not some way or some balance that could help deflate gas prices, or would that have to be industry-wide to make a difference?
I think it would have to be industry-wide, but as I've stated numerous times before the commission, I believe that fuel diversity is key. I don't think that we need to have reliance on one singular fuel to supply our electric generation needs either in the past, the present, or the future. So I think it's key that we continue to have diversity, and I think that that is the main and primary reason is that as one fuel has difficulties, as we've seen, when the coal industry has difficulties, gas can fill in. When gas has difficulties, such as what we saw over Winter Storm Elliott, fuel oil and coal helped us out with regard to that. I also think renewables in the future, as we improve battery technology, that type of generation will be necessary. Diversity will be the key long term.
Okay. And it seems to me that, I don't know, I haven't been in this business that long, but it seems to me that when the whole conversation of coal retirement came up, that there was a quick jump to gas and maybe not enough consideration of other renewables. Would you agree with that or disagree?
I think the concern is that, and why people focus on natural gas right now as we look at coal retirements, until battery technology is advanced, the concern we have is how do you take coal generation, which is a base load type of generation, and replace it with something that cannot be seen as base load today. So unless we have a means to store renewable energy, we won't be able to necessarily rely upon it for those peak periods. We have the capacity, but not necessarily the generation. So natural gas is just the backfill right now for both renewables and for coal replacement. That's really the only opportunity we have to replace that baseload generation today.
Okay. Well, what is Dominion doing as far as preparation for storage? I mean, I know batteries are not quite there, and that's an ongoing process, but is there, I'm sure there's something going on with the company where you're looking at that in the near future.
I think they're evaluating that, but sir, that's out of my purview. I couldn't speak to the details associated with it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brookmeyer, how are you?
Yes.
I think you know what I'm going to ask.
Go right ahead.
Do you think that the situation in the Ukraine, I noticed in your testimony, I think your language was the prospect of supply becoming unavailable was a concern. And in there you talked about increases of 16% for one procedure, 26% on conversion. If you have adequate storage, which I think you've told Commissioner Thomas, why would these numbers go up so rapidly?
Well, excuse me, was that, okay. Yeah, so why do the numbers go up is because of the global demand issues. If, the European countries have pulled back a lot of supply from Russia, and the U.S., through legislation in the U.S. Senate and House, are contemplating mandated cutoff of Russian import of enriched uranium. That's going to put pressure on the Western enrichers to increase that capacity. In order for them to increase capacity, there is a very large capital outlay for them to do that. And so there's going to be that increase in cost for capital to be able to have that capacity. That's really what the driver primarily is.
Okay. In your personal opinion, do you see the situation getting better or worse at the present time?
Well, it would be speculation on my part, and I tend to be an optimist, so I would like to think it's going to get better, but we certainly don't want to plan for it to be better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're providing weapons against them. I just don't see how it can get any better.
I agree.
Are there other countries that are starting conversion, enrichment, or different places, that other purchasing areas that you're looking at?
Well, the cost for entry for enrichment is very high, and so it's going to be limited really to those companies that have access to the technology. And right now that's primarily Urenco and Orano, which are the two Western suppliers of enrichment. There is another company called Centrus, which is a U.S. company, and they are working with the U.S. government in developing and deploying a new technology. It's still centrifuge technology for enrichment, and that is looking positive and coming up. We are also working, I shouldn't say working, that's too strong, but we're following and engaging with another company called Global Laser Enrichment, which is new technology, one that would provide additional competition for centrifuge technology. And while that still has a long way to go, we're interested in certainly having a vested interest in how that develops. And so we are engaged with that company just to follow their progress.
Okay. And you say the company is working with the government. Is there some benefit coming from the Infrastructure Investment Act that's helping your field or uranium development?
Well, the U.S. government is engaged through Department of Energy in trying to assist both uranium development in the country, in the U.S., domestic uranium, which exists, but it exists at a higher price for being marketable, let's put it that way. Now, the market price for uranium has increased a little bit, so some domestic supply is becoming available at those new market prices. But the government is also, the U.S. government is looking for ways to bolster that supply, and also in working, as I mentioned, with enrichment companies to produce something called LEU plus, which is a higher enriched form of uranium, and also HALEU, which is another even higher enriched form of uranium for advanced reactors, which we're not working with right now, but we do have an interest in LEU plus, and so we're looking and helping facilitate that.
The higher enriched, does that mean there would have to be a change in the law about the 5% level?
It's not just any legal basis for the 5%, but the companies that related to that, though, the companies that use that enriched uranium, such as Westinghouse down the road, converters, all would have to have their licenses increased.
All right. And I noticed, in the news in the last month or so, the government is trying to fix it where we make our own computer chips and trying to bring business home. And I think that's what you're pretty much saying that we're trying to do with uranium as well.
That's correct. It's to the U.S. government's interest to have indigenous supply. And right now, when the gaseous diffusion plants in Paducah and Piketon, Ohio shut down, in Paducah, Kentucky, we don't have any real indigenous enrichment capability except for Urenco's plant in New Mexico, but due to treaty arrangements, they can't use that enriched uranium for military or naval vessels.
Thank you. Mr. Shin, just one question so you won't feel left out. Do you agree with Ms. Jackson about the diversity and the fact that coal can step up if other prices get out of range or supplies become a problem?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When the Winter Storm Elliott hit, we had 30+ days of inventory on the ground at our facilities.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Mr. Brookshire, I have, I guess, a follow-up question. The comment that you made about the New Mexico plant and that not being, I don't know, I didn't really understand what you were saying there. Can you kind of go back over that?
Sure. The New Mexico plant is it's called LES, Louisiana, oddly enough, Energy Services. It's an enrichment plant, fairly new, came online around 2010. It was in development for quite a bit longer before that. But it's owned and operated by Urenco, which is a company based out of the UK. It uses a centrifuge technology that is maintained both by Orano, which is a French organization, and Urenco. And that centrifuge technology can only be used for peaceful purposes. So the U.S. government, as they had in the past, has an interest in developing technology indigenous to the U.S. that can be deployed for purposes not only peaceful, but they need it for naval vessels to power, the submarines and the carriers.
Okay. Let me apologize for mispronouncing your name there a minute ago.
You're not the first.
Well, yeah, I experienced that a lot too, but anyway. Can you say anything about the small modular reactors, or is that kind of outside your area?
Well, we haven't been, we meaning my group, so it does get a little bit outside my purview, but I know that the company is looking at deploying small modular reactors, but the time frame still needs to be ironed out, and the technology has to be selected. We haven't down selected any technologies yet.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Caston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Follow-up. Ms. Jackson, listening to, I guess, the responses from Commissioner Powers and Mr. Shin, you too, I guess, from Commissioner Thomas. I heard you mention, I guess, coal retirements is a concern for more diverse generation mix. Is that correct? Yes, but is someone forcing you to retire the coal facilities, or are they just outdated and you got to replace them, or what? Help me understand what that means.
If you look at the directives in this country and all of the requirements that we're going to have related to clean air permitting in the future, it is pushing us away from coal initially and then from all fossil fuels. So this country, it has a desire to move away from fossil fuel power generation. And I think the concern that I have is that we need all fuels to generate power, because as we've seen in the past, things that have happened with natural gas, the volatility of prices there, volatility of coal, the things we've seen with the nuclear industry, we need all of these resources in order to have diversity so that when something happens with one fuel, then the other fuels can pick up. But you're seeing it happen today with natural gas. It has taken us 8 years to try to get Mountain Valley Pipeline, and it's still not in service. And I think that what we saw happen during Winter Storm Elliott, we needed that 2 BCF of gas supply into Transco's system. So we're now seeing not just what could happen, but what has happened as a result of limiting new pipeline capacity and by looking at retiring coal.
So you're saying the wisdom of diverse generation, and I understand that, I get that. And while there's absolutely nothing I can do with the rest of the country, relative to the state of South Carolina, this commission, Dominion Energy South Carolina, is there anyone or anything directing Dominion to retire any generation early?
No, sir, that will be taken up and considered as part of the integrated resource plans that you'll be looking at soon. But I just think that we're going to have the pressures associated with federal rules and regulations also. So we'll have to take those, and y'all will have to consider those also. A lot of this is happening at the federal level. A lot of it is litigation on the natural gas side. There are permits that have been in hand from Mountain Valley Pipeline, but those permits have been appealed time and time again. This biological opinion is on its 3rd appeal. So it goes back before the Federal Appeals Court, and so there's more delays associated with it. And there's no timeline on litigation. So it's not your normal permitting process before FERC or any of these other state bodies. When you get engaged in litigation, there is no timeline. So it just extends the amount of time it takes to bring on new capacity.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you seem to have significant concern with, I guess, any policies, federal policies that limit generation diversity.
Yes, sir. I believe that we've been given God-given resources right here in this country. And I think it would be a mistake to say that only one specific type of fuel generation is what this country needs long term. I wouldn't invest all of my personal money into one stock as part of my retirement portfolio, and I certainly don't want to do that for my power generation.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. No more questions.
Commissioners, further questions? Ms. Jackson, I had a question. In your testimony on bottom of page 7 over on the top of page 8, you mentioned that Carolina Gas Transmission had an acquisition of an additional, or the numbers you gave included an acquisition of an additional 42,000 decatherms of capacity.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner?
Sorry, I think maybe having a hard time hearing you in the back.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Are you with me on your testimony? Yes, okay. So that is an additional capacity, that's additional capacity that came on January 1 of 2023.
Yes, ma'am.
If that had been available in December, would that have helped the constraints that were experienced during Winter Storm Elliott?
No, ma'am. The constraints actually happened upstream of Carolina Gas Transmission. What happened was that Transco's main line had unusually low pressures for that area, coupled with varying pressures. We saw pressures that dropped 100 pounds within an hour. So what happened was, as Elba Express tried to bring on their Hartwell compressor, it was fighting against those changing pressures and that extremely low pressure. And so they were trying to bring it on, it would get knocked off. Bring it back on, it would get knocked off. So then they found that there was damage done to the compressor that had to be repaired, which is what created the force majeure event. It was on Elba Express's pipeline system that's upstream of Carolina Gas Transmission. And we would have had access to the Carolina Gas Transmission capacity on an interruptible basis, but going forward, we had this opportunity to acquire this on a firm basis.
Okay, so this has just become firm versus interruptible, this
Yes,
additional
we were
capacity?
using it as, we would be able to use that as interruptible capacity, but we saw that we had this opportunity to acquire it on a firm basis, and it's now in our name instead of using it as interruptible on Carolina Gas.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Justin Williams, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair, for recognizing me. Ms. Jackson, I had maybe one or more questions for you, depending on how the answers go. You referenced the direction of the country potentially with getting away from fossil fuels, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm just curious to know whether or not you and your team considered the alternative reality. Simply put, if all the things we think will happen don't happen, then what?
I think that's why
regarding getting away from fossil fuels.
I think that's why we continue to support fuel diversity, because I agree with you. I think there's a lot of discussion in our country about coal retirements in particular. However, there doesn't seem to be an answer to how do you replace that base load generation. You know, coal plants have inventory on the ground right there next to the facility. We don't have that in natural gas. We don't have that in renewables today. So there is a difference in the fuel availability of coal versus other generation fuels. So I think that's why I have always supported fuel diversity, and I will continue to support fuel diversity. I just don't think it's wise for our country to put all of our eggs in one or two baskets.
Right. I understand that. I guess I'm referencing the decision to shut down the coal plants, or retirement, I should say. I mean, is that a firm decision? Can you pull that back? Like, how much flexibility do you have in that decision?
I think those are the kind of questions that'll be addressed in the IRP proceeding. But I think, like I stated before, it's going to be a balance between federal requirements and state requirements. And so I don't think any of us have any control over what happens on the federal level. So it's trying to balance that. And it may not be a regulation that comes to fruition that we can specifically see where the federal government says you have to retire coal. But if they structure the cost associated with burning coal to make it uneconomical, then in effect, they have retired coal plants.
I understand that. Okay. How, from your perspective, how long have you say the country, I'm just going to say the business, how long has the business been going in this direction, in your opinion, transitioning away from fossil fuels, leading to a decision to potentially retire coal plants?
The last 10 to 15 years.
Okay. And in that time, how many laws, policies have changed to impact the business?
I don't have those specifics, but there have been a number of those, and that coupled with litigation. As I stated, it may not be a specific rule or regulation that mandates retirement, but just like take Mountain Valley Pipeline, for example, what business can wait 8 years to begin to recover its cost associated with the development of a project? So they continue to go through litigation. There is no end specified. So it becomes an economic choice, not necessarily a compliance with a regulation choice, if that makes sense. You can make one fuel so costly that we can't afford to use it. So we have seen natural gas capacity, just for example, our contracts today on Southern and Transco that we've had for 30 or 40 years, the average cost per unit is roughly somewhere about 40 to 45 cents. You're going to see triple that for any new capacity, if not quadruple that. That has occurred in the last 10 to 12 years.
And so, and when that happens, that forces you to consider alternative fuels, right?
Correct. But then I think we have to take into account reliability. And as I have said, when you look at the renewables and the battery technology today, we just can't store that capacity or that generation the way we can other fuel sources. So until that technology advances, what are we going to use when the sun may not be bright enough or the wind is not enough to produce during peak periods?
Right. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. What's concerning to me, and I'll leave it at this. What's concerning to me, it almost seems as if you feel backed in a corner, and as a personal preference, I hate being backed into a corner. I like flexibility to make a decision based on what's best at the time, and that can change from day to day. And so I would just hate for ratepayers to be in a position where they can't take advantage of every option that's available, or that you can't take advantage of every option that's available to provide affordable, reliable energy. That's my concern. But you addressed my questions. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioners, anything further?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Urban.
Thank you. Since we're talking about the issue of transitioning to a cleaner energy sources like renewables, are you aware that North Carolina's just opened their largest battery storage system? It's up and running at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. It's the largest battery storage system in North Carolina, I believe. 11 megawatts. You aware of that development?
I have read an article on that, yes, sir.
Yes. I'm wondering why Dominion is not getting more serious about this battery storage, because it is an important resource for our transition to cleaner energy. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I think the company follows those advancements and is actively participating in some of that discussion.
Well, I hope so, because it is dispatchable. The cost is coming down. The technology is getting better. And, you know, for a while we were concerned that it might not have a useful life, but that's changing. It's changing rapidly. So I'm just wondering, you know, Duke Energy, North Carolina's president says it's an important piece in their future planning to make that transition to cleaner energy sources. I'm just wondering why Dominion is not actively involved in procuring battery storage facilities. Could you explain that?
I can't explain why we haven't actively acquired those. It may be just the scalability of those types of battery storage. I mean, when you're looking at a 600 megawatt plant versus, I believe you stated 11 megawatts of storage in that facility at Fort Bragg, it would take a lot more to replace that 600 megawatt coal plant.
I understand that, and you know, it is certainly a scalability issue, but had we already had that in place during the winter storm that we experienced here in South Carolina during Christmas Day and thereafter, it would certainly have helped alleviate the stress on the system. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I can't speak to that. I would have to see what type of impact it would have had.
Well, you're familiar with what you have now. If you had 11 megawatts of storage available, it could have prevented some of these blackouts and rolling outages, would it not?
As I've stated, I'm not familiar enough with the technology to say what it could have or could not have done in that particular scenario.
Well, I know this is more of a integrated resource plan question, and so I'm going to challenge you to get ready for that proceeding later this year. I believe in August is when we'll hear it. And I want an update on what your plans are, because I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. It helps diversify the availability of dispatchable power, and I think that's what we're all working toward. So I look forward to hearing an update on that when we get together on the integrated resources plan. Fair enough?
Okay.
Commissioner, I don't know that Ms. Jackson is the correct witness for those questions, but I think Dominion has heard your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No further questions.
Vice Chair Powers?
Thank you. Just one follow-up. And Ms. Jackson, you may not be the right one for this, but just as our government's trying to bring back uranium and other things here, it seems, tell me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the solar parts and battery things that we need are coming from China, which I don't consider the most secure source around. Is that true, or is this type of the solar and other things being produced here in this country?
Commissioner Powers, I can't answer the specifics of that based on some articles that I've read, I do believe that China does source some of that, but I'm not involved in the details associated with that.
Okay, well, thank you.
Mr. Gissendenner, do you have redirect? And it's fine if you do. I'm just trying to figure out the lunch break here.
I have no redirect of these witnesses, and we would ask that they be excused.
Well, I will say that they can stand down, but you excuse witnesses at your peril.
And we are aware of your, we're aware of
I just
that.
always wonder what happens at the end of the day if I have a question.
We're aware of that. One thing I would point out, witness Brookmeyer has to catch a plane tonight back to Richmond. So
Understand.
if he needs to be recalled, we would have to arrange something virtually. But
Thank
we'll
you,
certainly
sir.
do that.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen and lady. Thank you for your testimony today, and you may stand down. And with that, we will take a lunch break until 2:30. Thank you.